The quantum sensors aboard the Axiary warship detected Earth's transmissions long before they entered the solar system. Admiral Vexthor stood at the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn, his scaled fingers drumming against the crystalline display panel as he reviewed the preliminary data about this backwater world. The planet's civilization barely qualified as spacefaring, with primitive orbital stations and a handful of lunar outposts. Perfect. The Axiary Empire had been locked in a brutal war with the Keldaran coalition for over 3 centuries. Both sides commanded vast fleets of ships that could tear holes in spacetime, wielded weapons that could shatter planets, and fielded armies of genetically engineered super soldiers, yet neither could gain a decisive advantage. The war had devolved into a deadly stalemate, with both sides desperately seeking any edge they could find. Earth represented such an opportunity, not for its technology, which was laughably primitive by galactic standards, but for its population. Humans were numerous, adaptable, and most importantly, expendable. The Axiary needed cannon fodder for their war effort, and this isolated world would provide it. Begin the standard first contact protocol, Vexthor commanded, his metallic voice echoing across the bridge. Let's see how these primitives react. The massive holographic displays that served as the ship's view screens came alive with images of Earth's major cities. New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing, all continuing their daily routines, blissfully unaware of the empire that had just entered their solar system. That ignorance wouldn't last long. Within hours, every electronic device on Earth began broadcasting the same message in all known human languages. People of Earth, you have been chosen to serve the greater glory of the Axiary Empire. Prepare for integration. The response was not what Vexthor expected. Instead of panic or immediate submission, Earth's governments maintained remarkable composure. Within 24 hours, the United Earth Defense Council convened an emergency session. Their reply was diplomatic but firm. We appreciate your contact, but wish to maintain our independence. We are open to peaceful dialogue and trade relations. Vexthor's secondary heart skipped a beat in amusement. These humans didn't understand their position. They weren't being given a choice. Send the second message, he ordered. This time, the transmission was accompanied by a demonstration. A small asteroid in Earth's belt simply ceased to exist, transformed into its component atoms by Axiary weapons technology. The message that followed was succinct. This was not a request. You have 24 hours to submit, or we will begin systematic elimination of your population centers. In the war room deep beneath Geneva, General Sarah Chen studied the sensor readings from the asteroid's destruction. Her expression remained neutral, but her mind raced with calculations. Earth's combined military couldn't hope to match even one Axiary warship, not in a conventional fight. But conventional warfare wasn't humanity's only option. They're making the same mistake everyone makes, she told the assembled world leaders. They think technological superiority guarantees victory. They don't understand that warfare is about more than weapons. It's about innovation, adaptation, and the will to survive. The council chamber erupted in heated debate. Some argued for immediate surrender, hoping to preserve lives. Others called for futile resistance. But Chen had a different proposal. We accept their demand, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. But on our terms, we'll join their war effort. But we do it our way. They want cannon fodder. Let's show them what human soldiers can really do. The plan was audacious, dangerous, perhaps even insane. But it was also uniquely human, taking a position of apparent weakness and turning it into an opportunity. 23 hours later, Earth transmitted its response. The people of Earth accept integration into the Axiary Empire and will contribute to the war effort as required. Vexthor was pleased but suspicious of how easily they had capitulated. His species had evolved from apex predators, giving them an instinct for danger. Something about this submission felt wrong, but he couldn't identify what. No matter, these primitives would learn their place soon enough. As the first transport ships descended to begin collecting their human conscripts, General Chen watched from her underground command center. The aliens thought they were gathering cannon fodder. Instead, they were about to receive something far more dangerous. Human soldiers who had spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare, who had learned to win against superior forces through guile, adaptation, and sheer determination. "Send the order to all recruited personnel," she commanded. "Operation Trojan Horse is now active. Remember your training. Observe, adapt, survive. And when the moment comes, show them why forcing humanity into their war was the biggest mistake they could have made." The first wave of human soldiers boarded the alien transports with perfect discipline and apparent submission. The Axiari observers noted this as a positive sign of their new subjects' compliance. They didn't notice the slight smiles on some of the humans' faces or understand the historical significance when one soldier whispered to another, "Remember the wooden horse of Troy." In his flagship, Admiral Vexthor added a note to his report to the Imperial Command. "Species shows promising signs of obedience, minimal resistance to integration. Recommend immediate deployment to low-priority combat zones to assess combat effectiveness." It would be the last time any Axiari commander would underestimate humanity's potential for resistance. By the time they realized their mistake, it would be far too late. Specialist Maya Patel stood at attention in the cramped quarters of the Axiari training vessel, surrounded by 50 other human recruits. Their alien instructor, Commander Zilks, paced before them, mandibles clicking in barely concealed disdain as he demonstrated the operation of a standard-issue plasma rifle. "This weapon is beyond your current technological understanding," Zilks announced, his translator making his words sound like grinding metal. "But even you should be capable of pointing it at the enemy and pulling the trigger." Maya kept her face carefully neutral, though her mind was racing. The weapon's design was inefficient, clearly prioritizing raw power over practical combat considerations. The reload mechanism was exposed, the power core poorly shielded. She counted 3 different ways to cause a catastrophic overload, and 5 potential weak points in the barrel assembly. She wasn't the only one analyzing. Every human in that room was doing what their species did best: adapting, learning, and finding ways to improve upon what they were given. The first combat deployment came sooner than expected. The Keldaran coalition had launched a surprise attack on a minor Axiari mining outpost in the Centauri sector. The Axiari commanders, true to their word, sent in their new human troops as a diversionary force, while their real soldiers prepared for the main assault. What followed would become legend in both human and alien military academies. The human forces, under the command of Colonel James Rodriguez, were given outdated ships and minimal support. Their orders were simple: engage the enemy and die slowly enough to be a decent distraction. But Rodriguez had other plans. "They expect us to fight like them," he told his officers during the pre-mission briefing. "So we won't. Time to show them how Earth handled asymmetric warfare." The human fleet approached the battlefield in standard Axiari formation, exactly as they'd been trained. The Keldaran commanders barely paid attention to these primitive newcomers, focusing instead on the main Axiari force they knew would be coming. They never saw the real attack coming. The human ships suddenly broke formation, splitting into smaller groups that seemed to move randomly. The Keldarans, whose tactical computers were programmed for traditional space combat patterns, couldn't predict their movements. Before they could adapt, the human ships had closed to point-blank range. Then Maya's engineering modifications came into play. The primitive humans had spent their training time making unauthorized improvements to their weapons. They'd discovered that the plasma rifle's power cores, when modified, could be turned into devastating short-range electromagnetic pulse devices. Dozens of modified weapons detonated simultaneously, creating a cascade of electromagnetic pulses that temporarily disabled the Keldaran ship's advanced shields. In the 17 seconds before their systems rebooted, the humans struck with conventional weapons, targeting the weak points they'd identified during their basic training. The Keldaran fleet, expecting to face inferior forces, found themselves fighting an enemy that ignored conventional tactics, exploited unexpected weaknesses, and turned their own technological superiority against them. By the time the main Axiari force arrived, the humans had already secured the mining outpost. Admiral Vexthor, watching from his command ship, felt his scales bristle with unease. The human victory didn't make sense. Their obsolete ships and limited weapons shouldn't have been able to defeat a Keldaran battle group. Yet they had, and with minimal casualties. Perhaps, his executive officer suggested, we should reevaluate our assessment of human combat capabilities. Vexthor chittered in agreement, but he was missing the larger picture. The humans hadn't just won a battle, they'd begun a revolution in galactic warfare. In her quarters after the battle, Maya continued working on weapon modifications, now with official approval. Around her, human engineers and technicians were doing the same, sharing innovations and improvements. They'd shown what they could do with outdated equipment. The Axiari, impressed by their victory, were finally giving them access to better technology. Colonel Rodriguez sent his report to General Chen back on Earth. Phase 1 complete. The Axiari are starting to trust us with real weapons. They still think we're just clever animals learning to use their tools. They haven't realized we're rewriting their entire book of warfare. Chen's response was brief. Excellent. Proceed with Phase 2. Let's show them what happens when humanity stops playing by their rules entirely. In the following weeks, human forces were deployed to increasingly important battles. Each time, they employed unexpected strategies that left both their allies and enemies baffled. They combined technologies in ways the aliens had never considered, adapted their tactics mid-battle, and demonstrated a level of tactical flexibility that the rigid command structures of both the Axiari and Keldarans couldn't match. The Axiari Empire had wanted cannon fodder. Instead, they had unknowingly recruited the most dangerous soldiers in the galaxy, not because of superior technology or physical strength, but because humans had spent their entire history learning to overcome exactly those advantages. And they were just getting started. The Helios Nexus was the single most important strategic location in the Orion Arm. Its unique spatial properties made it a crucial hyperspace junction, connecting major trade routes and military supply lines. For centuries, it had been neutral territory. Now, it was about to become a battlefield. The Keldaran coalition had launched their boldest offensive of the war, attempting to seize control of the Nexus. If they succeeded, they could strangle the Axiari Empire's supply lines and potentially end the war. The Axiari High Command knew this was a decisive moment. They had to hold the Nexus at any cost. Captain David Chen, son of General Sarah Chen, stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned ESS Normandy, Earth's first true contribution to the Axiari fleet. The ship looked like a standard Axiari destroyer on the outside, but its interior systems had been completely redesigned by human engineers. It was a testament to how far humanity had come in just 8 months of integration into the Empire. All stations report ready, his XO, Lieutenant Hannah O'Brien, announced. The Keldaran fleet will arrive in 30 minutes. David nodded, studying the tactical display. The Axiari had given him command of this sector because they considered it a low-priority defensive position. They didn't realize he had personally requested this assignment. Like his mother, he had learned to see opportunities where others saw limitations. Send the signal to all human ships, he ordered. Operation Thermopylae is go. Across the sector, human commanders received the message and began implementing their carefully prepared plans. The Axiari commanders, focused on what they considered the critical defensive positions, paid little attention to their human auxiliaries, moving into seemingly random positions. When the Keldaran fleet arrived, it was massive, nearly 3,000 ships strong. Their formation was perfect, their strategy textbook. They had planned for every conventional response the Axiari might make. They hadn't planned for humanity. The battle began predictably enough. The main Keldaran force engaged the Axiari defensive line, while smaller groups moved to secure critical positions around the Nexus. Everything proceeded according to their strategic calculations until David gave the order. Execute Phase 1. The human ships, which had been scattered across supposedly insignificant positions, suddenly began emitting massive energy signatures. Maya Patel's latest innovation had turned their engines into improvised gravity wells, creating a web of artificial gravitational distortions throughout the battlefield. The Keldaran fleet's formation, so perfect in normal space, began to break apart as ships struggled against unexpected gravitational forces. Their automated targeting systems, confused by the distorted spacetime, became unreliable. Phase 2, David commanded. The ESS Normandy and its sister ships revealed their true nature. Their hulls, apparently standard axiary design, were actually layered with metamaterials developed by human scientists. As energy weapons from both sides filled space, the human ships began absorbing and redirecting the attacks, turning the chaos of battle into a weapon. Colonel Rodriguez, commanding the ground forces, launched his own operation. Using modified axiary landing craft, his troops performed what the aliens considered impossible: combat drops through the gravity-distorted space. They began seizing critical infrastructure across the Nexus, while the main fleets were still engaged in space. The Keldaran commanders, their carefully planned offensive collapsing, tried to adapt, but they faced an enemy that seemed to violate the laws of physics and warfare simultaneously. Every time they adjusted their strategy, the humans had already anticipated and countered it. Admiral Vexthor, watching from his flagship, finally understood what he was seeing. The humans hadn't just learned to use axiary technology. They had reimagined warfare itself. Where the axiary and Keldaran saw combat as a clash of superior force and technology, humans saw it as a problem to be solved, a system to be hacked, a puzzle where the rules themselves could be rewritten. The battle lasted 11 hours. When it ended, the Keldaran fleet was in retreat, leaving behind hundreds of disabled ships. The Helios Nexus remained in axiary control, but everyone knew the real victory belonged to humanity. In the aftermath, David sent a simple message to his mother on Earth: "The door is open." General Chen smiled as she read it. The axiary had wanted cannon fodder. Instead, they had given humanity exactly what it needed: access to advanced technology, practical combat experience, and most importantly, the opportunity to prove themselves on a galactic stage. The next phase would be even more interesting, because now both the Axiary Empire and the Keldaran Coalition had to face an uncomfortable truth. They had created something far more dangerous than mere soldiers. They had given humanity the tools to become a power in their own right, and humanity was just beginning to show what they could do with that power. The Imperial Palace on Axiara Prime had stood unchanged for 10,000 years. Today, for the first time in its history, a human walked its crystalline halls. General Sarah Chen, now serving as humanity's official representative to the Axiary High Command, kept her expression neutral as she was led to the War Council chamber. Her footsteps echoed against floors that had never been meant for human feet. The chamber itself was a marvel of alien architecture, with walls that shifted like liquid metal and a ceiling that showed real-time projections of every major battle in the war. But Chen's attention was focused on the faces of the Axiary leadership. Behind their alien features, she could read something she'd been waiting to see: fear. Admiral Vexthor, now Supreme Commander of the Combined Fleet, began the briefing. The Keldaran Coalition has begun deploying new weapons based on human tactical innovations. Our technological advantage is eroding. They've learned from their defeats. Of course they have, Chen replied calmly. That's what any intelligent species would do. The question is, have you? The chamber fell silent. In the 3 months since the Battle of Helios Nexus, the war had changed dramatically. Human methods and strategies had proliferated throughout both sides of the conflict. The Keldaran Coalition, desperate to counter human innovations, had begun offering citizenship and full rights to human defectors. The Axiary Empire, in response, had been forced to grant humans increasingly significant roles in their military hierarchy. Maya Patel, now Chief of Advanced Weapons Development, presented her latest report through a holographic interface. The Keldarans are reverse engineering our gravity distortion technology, but they're missing something crucial: the human element. They can copy our tools, but they can't replicate our way of thinking. The evidence was in the numbers. Purely alien engagements still followed predictable patterns, but any battle involving human forces on either side became chaotic, unpredictable, and inevitably revolutionary. New tactics and technologies emerged almost daily. The rigid military doctrines that had dominated galactic warfare for millennia were crumbling. "We need to adjust our strategic approach," Colonel Rodriguez, recently promoted to oversee special operations, suggested. "The Keldarans expect us to escalate technologically. Instead, we go old school." Earth history is full of examples where seemingly primitive tactics overcome advanced defenses. The Axiari commanders chittered nervously. They had learned to respect human military advice, but this seemed counterintuitive. Yet their own advanced strategic systems confirmed Rodriguez's analysis. The most successful recent operations had combined cutting-edge technology with strategies drawn from human conflicts spanning thousands of years. Meanwhile, in the Keldaran High Command, similar discussions were taking place. Their initial attempts to copy human innovations had produced mixed results. Their forces had improved, but they still couldn't match the original human unit's effectiveness. Some began to wonder if they had underestimated not just human military capability, but human nature itself. David Chen, commanding what had become known as the Ghost Fleet, demonstrated this difference perfectly. His ships now moved through Keldaran space almost at will, using techniques that combined ancient Earth naval tactics with advanced alien technology. The Keldarans called him the Shadow, a bogeyman that their best commanders couldn't predict or counter. "The humans don't just adapt to circumstances," one Keldaran analyst reported. "They force circumstances to adapt to them. Every solution we develop becomes part of their arsenal. They learn not just from victory, but from defeat, perhaps especially from defeat." The truth was becoming clear to both sides. Humanity wasn't just another species to be used as cannon fodder. They were catalysts, changing the very nature of warfare in the galaxy. The Axiari had thought they were recruiting soldiers. Instead, they had introduced an agent of chaos into a system that had been stable for millennia. In her quarters after the War Council, General Chen reviewed the latest reports from Earth. The planet's defenses had been revolutionized. What had begun as a forced conscription into an alien war had become an unprecedented opportunity for human advancement. Earth's scientists and engineers had learned to combine alien technology with human ingenuity in ways neither the Axiari nor the Keldarans had imagined possible. "They still don't understand," she wrote in her private log. "They think this is about military victory, but humanity isn't fighting for either side. We're fighting for our place in the galaxy, and we're winning." The Axiari Empire had wanted cannon fodder. The Keldaran coalition had tried to copy human methods. Both were missing the point. Humanity wasn't just changing the war, they were changing the galaxy itself. And soon, both ancient powers would have to decide: continue fighting each other, or deal with the new force they had unknowingly helped create. The next phase was about to begin, and this time, humanity would be writing the rules. The Galactic Concordat would be signed in neutral space aboard a station of human design. The choice of location was symbolic. Neither Axiara Prime nor the Keldaran homeworld would host this historic moment. Instead, the three species would meet as equals in humanity's first major contribution to galactic architecture. The station itself was a testament to human innovation. Its design incorporated elements from both Axiari and Keldaran technology, but reimagined in ways neither species had considered. Like humanity itself, it represented the bridge between different worlds and ways of thinking. Admiral Vexthor stood at one of the station's observation windows, his scaled hide reflecting the light of distant stars. "I remember when we thought we were doing your species a favor," he said to General Chen, "lifting you from your primitive existence into galactic civilization." Chen smiled. "A common mistake. Everyone assumes technological advancement is the only measure of civilization. They forget that technology is just a tool. It's how you use it that matters." The last year had proven that beyond any doubt. After the Battle of Helios Nexus, the war had entered a new phase. Human innovations had proliferated throughout both sides, but more importantly, human ideas had begun to reshape galactic society itself. Maya Patel's engineering corps had revolutionized not just military technology, but civilian applications as well. Colonel Rodriguez's tactical doctrines were being taught in both Axiari and Keldaran military academies. David Chen's Ghost Fleet had become legendary, but its greatest achievement wasn't military. It was proving that different species could work together in ways neither side had imagined. The Keldaran delegation arrived first, led by their high commander. Their once pristine military formation now showed clear human influences, more flexible, more adaptable. They had learned, perhaps better than the Axiari, that survival meant evolution. "Your species has changed everything," the High Commander told Chen. "We thought we understood warfare, politics, technology. We were like children playing with toys, thinking we knew all there was to know." The peace conference began without the usual pomp and ceremony both alien species traditionally required. Another human influence: practicality over protocol. The terms had largely been negotiated in advance, but this moment mattered. It wasn't just about ending a war. It was about charting a new course for galactic civilization. The terms were revolutionary. The Axiari Empire and Keldaran Coalition would maintain their territories, but enter into a new framework of cooperation. Humanity, despite being the youngest species present, would serve as mediators and peacekeepers. Earth would gain protection and access to advanced technology, but more importantly, humans would have a voice in galactic affairs. "This is unprecedented," one Axiari counselor protested. "No species has ever gained such influence so quickly." "No species has ever proven themselves so thoroughly," Vexthor countered. "They've earned this position not through force of arms or technological superiority, but through innovation, adaptation, and understanding." As the delegates signed the historic document, David Chen was leading a joint human-alien expedition to establish the first Concordat Defense Force base. The force would combine the best aspects of all three species: Axiari technology, Keldaran discipline, and human innovation. Back on Earth, the changes were even more profound. The planet had transformed from an isolated world to a crucial center of galactic culture. Human cities now featured architecture that blended Earth traditions with alien aesthetics. Universities taught courses combining Earth history with galactic knowledge. Earth's first faster-than-light ships were under construction, incorporating innovations that even their alien allies hadn't considered. "We never wanted this war," General Chen addressed the assembly after the signing. "But we understood something both your species had forgotten. True strength isn't about having the most advanced weapons or the largest fleet. It's about being able to adapt, to think differently, to find solutions where others see only problems." She paused, looking at the representatives of three species who had begun this journey as enemies and were ending it as partners. "The galaxy is entering a new age, not one dominated by any single species or ideology, but one where different perspectives and approaches make us all stronger." The Axiari Empire had wanted cannon fodder. The Keldaran Coalition had sought to maintain their power. Instead, both had helped forge something new, a galaxy where humanity's greatest weapons weren't their ships or technology, but their ideas and their ability to imagine different possibilities. As the ceremony concluded, Maya Patel was already working on new designs, Rodriguez was developing training programs for mixed-species crews, and David Chen's Ghost Fleet was preparing to explore uncharted regions of space. They had proved humanity's worth in war. Now they would prove it in peace. The stars looked different from the station's observation deck, not distant points of light, but gateways to new opportunities. Humanity had been dragged into a war they didn't want, but they had turned that challenge into an opportunity to reshape the galaxy itself. And this was just the beginning.